the show know that I had a colonoscopy on Friday afternoon. I got home and really you're okay. You can do anything, but I was just kind of in this spiritual kind of mood. Like I'm pure. I'm clean. And I'm they determined, well, they haven't determined, they caught a what could be a precancerous thing in my colon, a small thing, but they said not to worry. They're going to test it, but it's usually benign. But I just want to say, if you are coming up to a gratitude deficit as we approach the holiday, the one thing I would suggest to you is just go get a colonoscopy. I mean, that you'll know something, you'll learn something about your body, about yourself, and you'll go through an experience that is cleansing. And you will be grateful because either you will confirm that you're all right, or you'll catch something before something really goes bad. And if you don't believe me, then ask the people who have colorectal cancer. I mean, I cite in my ALDEF column that I wrote today that it's like the number 2 cancer among Asian Americans. Can you believe that? The number 2. And I just think as a public service, I'm happy that my colonoscopy coincides with Thanksgiving. I mean, that's how I was going to write my column. And if you go to ALDEF, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, I write that. And it's kind of a fun but public servicey oriented column, right? Because I'm serious. Uh, you, I mean, I'm an example of a reluctant colonoscopy guy. I didn't want to get one. Don't know why. I just felt like don't want to bother. I go into that in my column, but I was a little out of it because I did catch a cold of some sort. I'm COVID free. I tested. It wasn't COVID, but I had some kind of viral thing that was maybe when I was in the hospital or something. I don't know. I ended up with the sniffles and took some cold medicine. I'm fine, but the cold medicine had me out for most of Saturday and most of Sunday. And of course, the big news, the really big news, is not my colon. My I mean, I'm not that much of a narcissist where my narcissism extends to my colon. Heaven forbid. However, uh no, I mean seriously, I did that as a public service because I want to be the face of colonoscopies. I mean, Katie Couric can't always be the face of colonoscopies, and she's gotten off colonoscopies. She's gotten into this other thing. She's gotten into poop in the box, which isn't even good. I'm kidding. Too many false positives or false negatives. Too many false readings. Period. But I don't mind being the face of colonoscopies. I want to let you know you should get one. Anyway, so the thing this weekend, though, I mean, I was so out of it from this cold that I had and the cold medicine that when the shootings in Colorado Springs happened, I was out of it. I was just, too much cold medicine. And Sunday, totally out of it again. But it almost is as if on Sunday, the Transgender Day of Remembrance just went by me, and that is worth mentioning right now. It's worth mentioning because of the Club Q shooting also on Saturday night on the eve of Transgender Day of Remembrance. And I know my column would have been a little different had I not been totally under the weather. I mean, I was elated about my colonoscopy. I'm I'm at this point, they caught all the little things that could be precancerous. So I'm fine. But I wouldn't have known it had I not gotten it. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the procedure. And I will talk later about how if you are still on the fence on colonoscopy, don't be. Don't be on the fence there. I mean, it's safe. It's even kind of, dare I say, I found it kind of fun. It was fun to be with the doctors, and well, there's one doctor and the nurses mostly all Filipino. I it was just good to know what's going on down there. You know, when your colon says, "Hey, take my picture," and it's not an easy selfie. I'll get into my column in a bit, but I want to get serious now because the Club Q shooting is important. It should be important to everyone, not just if you're LGBTQ or LGBTQ friendly. And frankly, all society should be LGBTQ friendly. This is American society, right? These are people with rights. These are people, real people, members of our own families, right? I mean, but on a broad scale, Club Q should distress us because the Club Q shootings, 5 confirmed dead, about 25 injured. It's the most mass killings in the United States, according to USA Today, since 2019. 34. That's a milestone that we could live without. So that's in general. Guns. And this guy, Anderson Lee Aldrich, 22-year-old, who had the weapons, he had an incident June 2021 where he's called in on a bomb threat. Caucasian male, rather large from the Ring video that was shown on the news. Anderson Lee Aldrich, he's now in custody. He's in the hospital, but he's been charged. Here's what gets me. He hasn't talked, but we are. I mean, what surprises me is that homosexuality, being gay, has become so politicized now, but it's gone politicized to the degree where, okay, even conservative Republicans realize that some of their best members are either out gay or in the closet. So they don't go after mainstream gay, mainstream LGBTQ, but they go after trans people. And this is upsetting. I mean, they are included in the whole LGBTQIA plus movement. And if you look at the stats, I was looking at GLAAD. GLAAD says there's a 12-year high among all hate crimes for LGBTQ, and it's a 41% increase just in trans crimes. And then if you look at what's happening in politics, the extreme anti-LGBTQ bills that are out there, there's like 300 of them that are floating around, waiting to be passed, waiting for Americans to step up and say, no, you can't do this. Not to fellow Americans. These are laws looking to take away rights, and not from mainstream gays, because, you know, some of the finest Republicans and conservatives are mainstream gays. They're going after trans, and that's offensive. And so for this Club Q shooting to take place on November 19th, as we cross over into November 20th, it was the eve of the Transgender Day of Remembrance. This is much more concerning than it would think, because it's not some random shooting. We don't know. We haven't heard from Anderson Lee Aldrich. But judging from where, I mean, they're going to charge it as a hate crime. But judging where the sentiment is on the extreme right, on the anti-gay extreme right, they are going after trans people. And I don't think it was a coincidence that this happened on the day of Transgender Day of Remembrance. And it kind of sickens me that this has happened, because it means that we got to take it seriously. We have to take it more seriously than, well, we should always take it seriously, but this is much more of a thing than we may have feared. Now, if you don't know anything about Transgender Day of Remembrance, a woman named Rita Hester died in 1998 in Boston. She was stabbed to death. Trans woman, 20 times, 1998. They've never found her murderer. That's what began Transgender Day of Remembrance, November 20th. And I was just looking around the web. I noticed that the State Department put out on November 20th, they put out a Transgender Day of Remembrance press statement. The U.S. Department of State. This is how serious it is and why it's important that the U.S. Department of State put this out. Because even the politicos recognize how this has become a real political issue from the right, an anti-trans issue from the right. And so here is our government, Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State, putting out a positive message on Transgender Day of Remembrance. It came out yesterday, the 20th. On Transgender Day of Remembrance, the world pauses to remember the lives of the many transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming persons killed in acts of targeted transphobic violence. On every continent, transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming persons confront violence, harassment, and discrimination that shock the conscience simply based on their gender identity or expression. For far too many, their own governments contribute to this stigma by denying access to justice, health, economic, self-sufficiency, and community that are the hallmarks of inclusive and prosperous societies. We recognize Transgender Day of Remembrance because transgender persons are disproportionately represented among victims of violence around the world. Now, this is from our State Department. The U.S. State Department put this out on a Sunday, and thank goodness for that, because this is a message we need to hear. Go back to the press release. Second graph. There are ample ways to prevent discrimination and violence against transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming persons, beginning by recognizing their basic humanity and affirming their human rights. In addition, when trans persons are victims of violence and even homicide, it is essential that attacks be investigated, that the perpetrators be brought to justice, and that the investigators and media correctly gender the victims and investigate the attack as a possible hate crime. Advancing gender equity and equality advances safety, security, and prosperity for all. Last graph. This is from the State Department. Issued yesterday, the U.S. State Department. Transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming persons have always been a part of our families, cultures, and nations. History teaches us that gender diversity is not new and that the strongest societies celebrate the intellectual and cultural contributions and creativity that come from diversity. As we mourn the transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming persons who have paid the ultimate price for others' hatred, we honor their memory by continuing the fight for a world free of transphobic and gender-based violence and discrimination. Everyone should be able to live a life that reflects and celebrates their truest self. This is a press statement that is attributed to Anthony J. Blinken, Secretary of State, on Transgender Day of Remembrance, which was November 20th on Sunday, which is the day after the tragic event at Club Q. I mean, like I said, I thought that, well, I'm not using this as an excuse, but I was just coming out of this procedure, and I had a cold and I was on medication, so I was out of it. And I didn't realize that the shooting was at Club Q, which was considered a safe haven, a safe zone for people in very conservative Colorado Springs, Colorado. And as more details came out last night and tonight, or this morning, most of the day, I got into the story and I'm shaking my head, because this is a kind of wake-up call for all of us who are allies, friends, family members of LGBTQ people, that there are elements in our society that want to start an anti-LGBTQ movement, and they're beginning with trans people, and they're looking to take away rights from Americans. They're willing to deny their basic humanity. That can't happen in a democracy. That cannot happen in America. And so I'm just pleased to see the State Department send out a message to the world that the United States is combating these instincts that we're seeing. Can you imagine 300 anti-LGBTQ bills in legislatures around the country? And like I said, I quoted some GLAAD stats. The anti-trans hate numbers up 41%. This is a thing we need to be vigilant about. And I say this as a family member. Trans people in my family. This is our moment where we come together and we stand up to this violence, to this hate. We'll be following the Club Q story. They're putting out more information. We know about this 22-year-old Anderson Lee Aldrich. He had an issue with some kind of bomb threat at his mother's house a year ago. But I can't explain this. I think back over my life, and I've lived a long time, and I thought I've seen it all, right? I'm as good a gay ally as there can be. I remember going to parts of the South, to gay clubs in the South in the 70s, and not thinking there was anything. I didn't think there was anything wrong with that, but thinking that, okay, that was in the 70s. I couldn't imagine looking forward, projecting forward, that in 50 years this would still be an issue in America. And it's sad. Let's remember the victims at Club Q. We'll continue to follow the story. I'm you know, how do you explain this? I don't know. I just don't know. So I was sick. I went in to get my colonoscopy on Friday afternoon. And as I wrote in my ALDEF column, I usually write my Thanksgiving column where I tell you to eat more tofurkey. I usually tell you to change your diet, right? And it usually begins with talking about how the president, whatever president, is going to pardon some turkeys. And once you know it happened again, well, it's like clockwork. It's predictable. President Biden pardoned chocolate and chip 2 North Carolina turkeys. But he didn't think about the other 45 million unpardoned birds. And if I were you, I would just go vegan. I mean, let's face it, it's not impossible to go beyond the cruelty. Get it? It's not impossible to go beyond the cruelty of the Thanksgiving meal. I mean, you'll still be full, but you'll be healthier. And if you eat more vegan meat substitutes and vegetables, your colon will definitely be grateful. And that is my goal for this year, to have a grateful colon. Because as I said last Friday, I had a colonoscopy. Now, consider this as your Thanksgiving public service message. And this is the fact. And by the way, welcome to Emil Amok's Take Out My Takes on all things considerable. We're here Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific live. I share my takes on the news. Colorectal cancer. Get this. Here's a basic fact. I bet you didn't know. Colorectal cancer is the second most common cause of cancer among Asian Americans, compared to the third most common in the U.S. And it's the most common cause of cancer death among Asian Americans, according to Wiley Research. Get that. Most common cause of cancer death. I mean, because everyone eats. Everyone has a colon. Not everyone smokes cigarettes or has lung cancer. Not everyone drinks and has liver cancer. But everyone eats. Everyone has a colon. And you're susceptible. So, yeah, the most common cause of cancer death among Asian Americans. And as far as I can tell, colorectal cancer, because I write about politics a lot, it isn't Democratic or it's Republican. It's not, you don't have a gay colon or a non-gay colon. You can't say, oh, those colons are the bad colons. Well, you'll know the bad colon. So you got to take a picture first. If you're over 50, a colonoscopy is the best preventive action you could take. And about that picture, colonoscopy, of course, is a big word for your large intestine would like its picture taken from the inside now. Now, in the past, this would seem to be an almost impossible selfie. I mean, it's difficult to get that, Kodak moment. The universe did not make it easy to do such a thing. But thanks to human ingenuity, the idea of a camera up one's butt was not considered so daunting a task. Today, get this, colonoscopies are practically like a drive-through. There are 15 million colonoscopies done in the U.S. each year. 15 million. It's practically a Mac colonoscopy. And yet, for some reason, I remain skeptical. I'd signed up and canceled so many times for a colonoscopy. And I even thought that maybe this alternative method, which I call poop in a box, you simply put your stool in a plastic bag and you send it by USPS. The P does not still stands for postal. You put it in the bag, you send it by mail, and I couldn't do it. I know my mailman. I couldn't do it. The box sat on my desk, unfilled. And now I notice on TV, Katie Couric, whose husband died of colon cancer, has switched from being the face for colonoscopy to advocating for poop in a box. I still couldn't, but frankly, I want to be. I want to be the face for colonoscopy. I can't explain my colonoscopy reluctance at first, but believe me, the facts end up making the case. Second most common cause of cancer among AAPI, most common cause of death, cancer death. Compelling facts. So I was ready for the procedure. But then last month, the New England Medical Journal published a study, a landmark study, that said the benefits of colonoscopies for cancer screening might be oversold. There was a group from the University of Oslo. They did the first head-to-head comparison of colonoscopies versus doing nothing in a randomized trial. So, yeah, here you are. Here's what people did who had the colonoscopies, and here are people who did nothing. And guess what? Only an 18% lower risk of getting colorectal cancer, and no significant reduction in the risk of cancer death. It just wasn't as, you would think it would be higher, like in the 40s or 50 or 60%, right? People would be getting colorectal cancer. But the do nothings won, it seemed. This was the procrastinator's enabler. But then all you got to do is look into recent history. Remember Black Panther? The actor, Chadwick Boseman. He died 2 years ago. At age 43 of colorectal cancer. I know he sort of fought it in secret. But the point is, this cancer is increasingly hitting younger demos. And it's a cancer that is preventable if caught in time. How is that done? The colonoscopy. Finally, my wife, she's the reasonable one in the family. She said, stop acting like a baby and just do it. So I did it last Friday. Now, the worst thing about a colonoscopy is the so-called prep. And I'm going to help you out. Ask your doctor for the prep that takes just 6 ounces of clear fluid and tastes like Robitussin. You mix that with 10 ounces of water, and you drink another 32 ounces within an hour. 32 ounces of plain water. But that makes 48 ounces of liquid total. That's the shortcut. 48 ounces, that's a lot better than the gallon they used to make you drink. I know this from colonoscopy veterans who said, we used to drink a gallon of water. What happens is your stomach gurgles up, sort of like a bubbling hot springs. And then you race to the toilet where you sit down, and then it feels like a trapdoor opens up under your bowels. Or maybe it's more like Niagara Falls. Not sure. Results may vary. But it all comes out. You got 48 ounces in you. It doesn't happen all at once. Maybe 8 times over the next 4 hours or so. 8 times over the next 4 hours or so, Emil? How many times could I watch, or how many Godfathers is that? Can I watch all 3? Is there 4? And then 12 hours later, guess what? You do it again. 48 ounces in, 48 ounces out, and you go through it all. Your poop evolves from murk to clear. And when it's clear, oh my God, the promised land. And that really is the worst part of the colonoscopy, the prep. But get this, your colon is clean and presentable for public viewing. So I say, thank God for Filipino nurses and Indian doctors, because I went to the hospital and I meet my doctor, a good Indian doctor. I don't want to name him because I didn't ask his permission, and he deserves privacy. I can talk about my poop, but I don't want to necessarily involve him. But nice guy. And I try to do a video with my cell phone where he explains how he's going to take a picture of my large intestine. And I repeat the line, oh, my colon is ready for its close-up. My Indian American doctor plays along, but then stops and says, you better press the start on the camera. Oh my God. And at that point, I knew I was in good hands. This is the doctor who knows not to forget to press the shutter on the colon cam. The nurses, they were there and they were helping. One had a hard time getting my IV in, but then she got it in nicely, and I wasn't in too much pain. There was no pain. It's just like a little prick. And the Filipino nurses know I'm one too when they say my last name. Oh, Guillermo, just like all the Filipinos. Yeah. And then one said, you're like my dad. Oh, I don't know if I'm like your dad, but. And they roll my gurney into the procedure room, the photography suite, I call it. And one of the nurses who saw me with a camera, I had a camera, I was taking notes. She said, do you blog? And I told them I was a journalist. I wrote columns. And the doctor said, at this age, as if work were not an option. And I said, Doc, you're about to put a camera in my butt. Is it too much to Google me? And that fortunately got a big laugh from the team. The three nurses who were there and the doctor in the operating room. You want a happy colonoscopy team if you're going to have a procedure like this. They turned me over on the side and they inserted the camera. But by then, I've been given the sedative Demerol. Demerol, as you know, is an opioid, and I attest it really works. In fact, for me, a half dose was all it took. I definitely was not in my body. I was somewhere else. The next thing I knew, I was slightly upright, and they're showing me pictures like vacation snapshots. Here's your colon, said the doc proudly. I was a little woozy, but I was told they found a small polyp, snipped it off to test for malignancy, and basically, my vegan diet had done the trick. I had a young man's colon. I mean, not like they replaced my colon with the young man's, but my old colon was really a young colon. And that was that. And then they send you home. On the drive back late in the afternoon, I was relieved. It was not a big deal. They didn't find a potential for cancer. And I may not have to do this again for another 5 years or more, but I'm thinking, I kind of like this. Maybe I could do this every year. You know, I don't think I ever felt this clean ever before. You know, my colon was empty. It's a kind of purity like I've never felt before, as if there's some deeper meaning to my colonoscopy, like maybe something spiritual. And I turn to my wife who's driving us home, and she's my reality check. Knock it off, she tells me. It's just a colonoscopy. And she's on to the next thing, dinner. But not for me. I stayed pure for 2 more days, drinking just water and coffee and bouillon. I just like the empty feel. And then on Sunday afternoon, I broke the fast with a banana burrito, which is just a banana and some, that whole wheat tortilla with the extra fiber. You got to get that fiber. Got to get the extra fiber. I mean, remember, the AAPI colon cancer stats. If you're hesitant about a colonoscopy, don't be. I mean, at least that's my recommendation. If you're middle-aged or older, get one. Frankly, I'm grateful I had mine around Thanksgiving. If you find yourself racking your brains wondering what to be thankful for, you definitely should get a colonoscopy. It's guaranteed to cure your gratitude deficit from the inside out. And that's my colonoscopy story. As a public service, I offer it. Because I think it's just worth talking about. Not because my colon is special. I do not have a special colon. But like I said, if you don't know what to be thankful for, if you don't know how grateful you should be, I mean, there's a whole mystery in the insides or on the insides of your body that you don't know about unless you unlock unlock the door and see what's there through either MRI or colonoscopy. And when you see it and you say, "Oh, I'm clear. I'm pure." I'm telling you, that's something to be thankful for. That is really something to be thankful for. All right, that's it for the show today. It's good to be here. I may be repeating this show because it's we're getting into holidays, right? I mean, we're getting into people are going to be going off, right? I mean, I was talking to some friends already on the East Coast. They're going down to family in Florida, going off, they're traveling. People are traveling starting Wednesday, going to be gone for the weekend. So, you might hear this on repeat. Still, a lot to talk about. The World Cup. Did you see that? The U.S. tied Wales. First game today, 1-1. One of the conversations I had with my gastroenterologist, I guess he's my gastroenterologist. I mean, we said, "Hey, the World Cup's on. Did you have a team?" And he said, "Well, I know the games are going to be on too late." I said, "No, they're going to be on in the morning." And U.S. and Wales played today. U.S. went up 1-0. Wales tied them. It was 1-1. They won 1, and then that's how it ended in a tie. This is one of the better U.S. squads. Look for Christian Pulisic. Some reason, I was a soccer coach, girls soccer. My daughters loved it, loved the game, loved coaching the women's game because it was the only time that I could play with them. And because the guys are too fast. The guys' game is too fast. But you appreciate the beauty of the guys' game. I appreciate women's soccer still, but there's a lot of skillful players, and you see them in they've all adopted a little bit of that Brazilian, Colombian, Italian, the Italians, the beautiful game has gotten more beautiful, except the politics of the World Cup. Oh, well, let's not get into that. But the U.S. is finally in the World Cup for the first time in how many years. Christian Pulisic, look for him. If the U.S. does well, it's because of him. All right. Tonight also, the 49ers play in Mexico City. That'll be fun. I hope they don't suffer from I just hope they have a good team meal. You never know. You're in a foreign land. You're in Mexico. I just hope they're okay. All right. Hey, this is Emil Amok's Takeout. My takes on all things considerable. We're here Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific. We do this show because I've been a reporter, a journalist, a talk show host for so long, and there's just so much to talk about, so much to respond to. I look at things from an Asian American perspective, and I appreciate you being here. You can catch the show on amok.com. I post the replays there. I post the live stream on Twitter at Emil Amok, EMIL AMOK, on Facebook at Emil Amok 1 on Facebook. At Emil Amok 1 on YouTube. Excuse me. Check that. At EMIL AMOK 1 on YouTube. And on Facebook, we're on fb.com or facebook.com or Facebook Watch, Facebook Live, or my Facebook page, fb.com/emilguillermo.media. Check that out. Regular viewers, listeners, you can view this, you can listen to it like radio. You know that I like to meditate. It's helpful. It's helpful. It's helpful to calm down and to relax, and do nothing before you act. But it all boils down to the basic metta, METTA meditation, the loving kindness meditation. Because before you show love to yourself, you really should show it to others. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till next time. Mahal Kita.